All right, Rich, it's 2:05 whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is President Rich Atwater. Welcome to our teleconferencing central meeting, and thank you for joining us. Before we get started, we wanted to do a reminder on public comment. We are now handling public comment requests through an online request form, which is accessible through the agenda. Please make sure you fill out and submit the online form by 2:15 if you wish to make remote telephonic public comments to us. We're also accepting written comments, and all written comments should be emailed to Ms. Rodriguez before the conclusion of the meeting. They will be included in the record of this meeting. So with that, why don't we go ahead, Claudia, and do roll call.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Director Atwater.
Present.
Director Palmer.
Here.
Director Stamera.
Here.
Director Blois.
Here.
Excellent. We have a quorum.
Would you please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Do we have any? Well, let me go ahead and just start. There we go. That's what I was looking for, the little flag.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance
To the
to the
flag.
flag of the United States of America,
And to the
for
republic,
which it stands, one nation under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible.
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now we'll move on to agenda item 4, public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to make comments on items that are not on the agenda today. I'll ask Ms. Claudia Rodriguez to let us know if there are any speakers.
So Director Atwater, we do not have any public comment requests for item 4. However, we did receive a letter from Stefan Volker, which I've distributed to you and will make available in an updated version of the packet, and requested that this be part of the public record for this meeting.
Great. Then we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is approval of the minutes from the August
I move we
meeting.
approve.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any public comments on the meeting, on the minutes?
No public comment requests.
Then we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Claudia?
Director Atwater,
Yes.
Director Palmer,
Yes.
Director Stamera,
Aye.
Director Blois.
Aye.
Excellent. The minutes have been approved.
We'll move on then to agenda item 7, which is the discussion items. The first one is 7A. Consider passing a resolution to approve amendment number 4 to the joint exercise of powers agreement and determine approval is exempt from the sequel.
Thanks, President Atwater. So the item before you is an amendment to the joint exercise of power agreement. And as a reminder, the joint exercise of power agreement, or JEPA as we call it, is the document that is executed between the DCA and DWR, which outlines the services that the DCA is currently providing. And again, as a reminder, those services are generally engineering and related work in support of DWR's consideration of a potential Delta conveyance project. The amendment before you today does not change any of the substantive terms of the JEPA. The sole change is to increase the amount of DWR's initial contribution from $33.8 million to $48.8 million. These funds are being used as temporary funding for DCA work until more secured funding is realized, and the anticipation is that that funding will be provided by DCA member agencies as well as other state water contractors that will participate in the Delta conveyance project. Did want to note one thing, and the board at our last meeting had asked us to make sure that any future JEPA amendments were brought forth with a red line. And because of the nature of this amendment, a red line really wasn't practical. But what staff did to make sure that it was clear what the edit was to add a comment into the version which is enclosed in the agenda packet, just clarifying the modified amount of the initial contribution. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Board have a question of Josh?
So I just wanted to clarify, Josh, so this does not change anything that we're actually already doing at this point. It just increases the amount. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
I move we
I have-
approve.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
This doesn't include any commitments that any of the signing parties, right?
That's correct. So this is a contract between the DCA and DWR. It's not a contract between the member agencies and DWR, or the member agencies and the DCA.
Director Atwood, I have a question.
There's a question.
Hello? Yeah, I have a question, Director. Are we changing the budget? Are we gonna get a line item budget since we did that last time with the prior dollars? So are we going to update the line item budget by this new amount?
So I'll let Catherine jump in, but it's my understanding that this would not be amended in the budget. This is just providing some of the funding for the previously approved fiscal year budget. Catherine, is that accurate?
Correct. Our budget remains as approved by the board at the June meeting. This is a funding extension.
Okay, so just to clarify for me, because I'm a little slow sometimes. So this increase then will just take care of stuff that has already been basically called for. It's not part of the new budget at all. Is that true?
That's correct. So it'll fund the previously budgeted activities, or a portion of those until more secure funding is obtained.
I believe this is funding through the end of December of this year.
Yes.
Yeah. So it doesn't affect our budget. We're still targeting we're still targeting a $34 million budget that's been approved by both DWR and the DCA board. These JEPAs are necessary to document the funding as it arises.
I'm just wondering. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Katana.
I was just gonna clarify. So if there's additional dollars to DCA, wouldn't that be then covered or unbudgeted dollars for your total available funding is 48.8? I'm just trying to understand so we know when we expect whether this money is gonna be spent the additional 15 or it's just additional funding. Then when you want to spend it, then you allocate how you're going to spend it.
Yeah, I'm kind of a bit confused myself. I would like to see this somehow clarified in some kind of a table that if this is like reserve funding or if it's already spent funding and we're just kind of taking care of some liabilities that we already had. I mean, I'd just like to see that clarified because that would give us more transparency, I think, to people looking at this.
Sure, just to be clear, this is to cover work that has previously been done and additional funding to take us out to the end of this calendar year. That's what this now brings us to.
Authorizations, the way I would say, you have an agreement with DWR that they'll, it doesn't amend our adopted budget with the DCA, but it provides an authorization for the transfer of funds from DWR to the DCA to cover approved budgeted expenditures. It doesn't set a deadline like through December. And then that's subject to reimbursement by the state contractors, of course.
That's correct.
Eventually.
Yeah.
It's much like, not to use the analogy, but in Congress, you authorize a total amount, and then you approve a budget for expenditures in this fiscal year versus this could carry over to the following fiscal year.
Okay, but it would be really nice to see it somewhere. I mean, I'm kind of with Katana. I think this is where she's going. Is that
Yeah.
it would be really nice to see it in a table someplace where, you know, you have things that add up and don't add up and negatives and positives, but to see it in a table where we can actually put it into either in a category or something.
We can do that.
Yeah, we'll do that.
We'll present that at the next meeting.
Yeah, I would like to see that. I think if we don't do it, we're gonna just be, a lot of people are gonna be very upset with us.
Yeah, I think we've done in the past, we have a budget to actual with monthly expenditures comparing it to the budget. In this case, you would have a different column. What's the authorized funding allocation from DWR that is to be repaid?
Yeah. But
Yeah, what we can do is
yeah.
put another table in the monthly that covers that issue. It's because we're doing our budgets annually and we're only authorized annually. The monthly report that we do is based on an annual budget, but we can go backwards to May when, you know, when we did the restart, May of 2019 and show the entire funding stream.
Yeah, that would be good. And maybe, you know, kind of asterisk it somewhere and say that this is where this particular funding came in.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
I'll second Sarah's motion.
And before we call the roll, just clarifying, Claudia, did we get any public comment on this item?
We do. We have 2 public comments. The first one would be Brandon Dawson and Dan Whaley. Director Atwater.
Yes, go ahead and Brandon is the first person. Go ahead and provide your public comment.
Good afternoon, board members. This is Brandon Dawson, a policy advocate for Sierra Club, California. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today. I just wanted to take a second and comment on this agenda item. As my organization is questioning its necessity and practicality. My organization consists of over 500,000 members and supporters statewide, and we're really worried about the state throwing funds at the Conveyance project when there are other better environmentally beneficial and resilient water projects that can also meet the objectives sought by DWR, the DCA, and water agencies around the state in their pursuit for the Delta Conveyance project. So we believe it would be prudent to assess and consider those types of projects instead of approving a $15 million increase as you all are proposing to do today, especially since the funding of the project from DCA member agencies is questionable, and there are major concerns in the state water agencies increasing rates to pay for the tunnel when there have been many reports recently around ratepayers not being able to afford their water bills and just water affordability generally. So we strongly suggest that DCA and DWR assess the opportunity costs of this proposal and also take a hard look at the money that they're putting into the project altogether. So thank you.
And
Hello?
Next comment?
Rich?
Yes. Yeah, who?
Sorry, I think you froze for a minute. And actually, we had 3 public comments. OSHA Meserve is also on that item.
Okay.
So, Mr. Whaley?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
The Delta Legacy Communities Board submitted a objection to this item going forward based on the fact that there has not been authorization or an agreement for this reimbursement, and that the Department of Water Resources is spending money that's not been appropriated for this purpose. And we're requesting that you examine our letter and provide a written response. And our suggestion is that you put this matter over for at least 60 days until you know that you're on proper legal foundation to do this change. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And then our last commenter.
OSHA?
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, thank you. Hi, this is OSHA Meserve for local agencies of the North Delta. I agree with the prior 2 comments, and I think in particular, I just want to add that just last month, the JEPA was amended to add about $5 million to it, and now, 30 days later, oh, the DCA needs another $15 million. As the discussion between staff and the directors just prior to public comment just indicated, there's a lot of confusion about what this money is for, why it's being allocated at this time, and all those things. So I agree with Mr. Whaley's request that this should be carried over. I don't think that anyone has enough information to make a decision on it right now, and definitely not the public. It's also important to look at the fact that there's various conflicting stories about what this money is, how it's coming to the DCA. For instance, according to the DCA's staff report, this money will be repaid to DWR. Yet when Senator Dodd asked for an explanation from DWR last year about the initial $19.7 million funds advanced back with EPA Amendment 1, the answer from Director Nemeth was that it was not an advance of funds, it was for services rendered. So I don't think it's at all clear what the money's for, where it's coming from. I don't have a copy of the Delta Legacy letter, but I think there are critical issues about whether DWR is even authorized to advance such funds to the DCA, given all the other obligations. And then you've also got the fact that not all the state water contractors, and many of the state water contractors, do not want to participate in the tunnel and do not believe that it will provide affordable water, especially for agricultural purposes. There's really only 2 water agencies represented here on your board, directly at least. And I'm sure you're all aware of the letter that came in from at least one of the state water contractors a few months ago, saying that they're concerned that funds are going out from state water project funds to pay for the tunnel, and they specifically object to that because it's not something they can afford. So it looks like there's some kind of shell game being played with a lot of public money and also state water contractor money. It's not authorized by law. This JEPA amendment should not be amended. And in addition, I disagree that it's exempt from CEQA. There could be significant impacts from a decision to expend an additional $15 million in furtherance of the tunnel. Thank you.
Your public comment. We have any other public comment?
Not at this time, Director Atwater.
We do have a motion and a second on this item. Any other discussion from the board, or we can go ahead and do the roll call?
As long as we get those clarifications that, in the thing as Katana has asked, and then I think we're fine, because it doesn't sound like it's for anything really new or that it's changing anything that we've actually done.
I agree with that, Sarah. Thank you for that clarification.
So I have Director Palmer as a first, and I'm sorry, who was the second?
Director Blois.
Thank you. You ready for roll call?
Yes.
Director Atwater?
Yes.
Director Palmer?
Yes.
Director Estremera?
You have to unmute yourself, Tony.
That might be an indication.
There you go.
I think he muted himself again.
But he did say aye. I heard him say aye.
Sorry. Director Blois?
Aye.
That resolution unanimously passes.
On to 7B, consider passing resolution to expand the DCA Delta Stakeholder Engagement Committee and appoint an ex officio member to the committee. And I understand we have one public comment on that item.
You do, and Nasli will speak to this resolution. Nasli?
Hi, everyone. Hope you're all well. The resolution before you is seeking to open up the public process and the application process to add a new stakeholder engagement committee member, as well as to appoint an ex officio member in the area of emergency services to the committee. The ex officio is not a public process. The stakeholder engagement committee member is a public process insofar as having to go through the application. I'm happy to go through the summary, but in short, we have heard over the last many months from folks that the community of Hood faces a lot of challenges in terms of being able to access information and attend various meetings online because there's so little broadband in the area. And Hood is the community that we believe will have probably be the most affected because of construction due to the site of 2 of the proposed intakes as part of this project. And so we feel like it's really important to make sure that the community of Hood is well represented and that they should actually have a Hood representative on the committee. It's a little bit different from the rest of the committee, but you know, after a year of figuring out what works and what doesn't and hearing the feedback, we thought this was appropriate. We had a stakeholder meeting about a couple weeks ago in Hood, which went really well. But I think it was also striking to see how much either misinformation there was or how little access folks had to the information at hand. So in the spirit of making sure that the community of Hood is represented, we'd like to add a position, which is what the resolution before you holds. And then Chief David Welch is the chief of the Cortland Fire Department and the Hood Fire Department. He also attended the stakeholder meeting that we held in Hood and was incredibly positive in terms of wanting to make sure that people had the right information, including and especially folks involved in public services and emergency services. That's a really big concern, obviously, from the DCA perspective as far as this project goes. And so to have Chief Welch would be, I think, a really wonderful addition to the, to the team. So I will move forward to the resolution. We recommend that the DCA board adopt a resolution to expand the DCA Stakeholder Engagement Committee and appoint an ex officio member to the committee. And our thought is if you were to approve this, then next week we will post the application. I'm saying this more for anyone who's listening to the call, but our plan would be to post the application, have a 2-3 week period open to get the applications in, and then we will come back to you either at the next board meeting or as a special board meeting to get a final vote on the actual applicants to see who's selected. So I will not read the whole thing unless you'd like me to, but whereas the Delta Conveyance, the DCA created the Stakeholder Engagement Committee to act as an advisory committee to the DCA Board of Directors. Whereas we've identified and wish to appoint an additional ex officio member for the committee and to wish to add an additional public member to the committee. Therefore, let's see. And this is both in one resolution. And therefore, the board of directors hereby resolves as. So the rest is in your hands unless you have any questions.
Oh, thank you very much, Leslie. I see Sarah. Are you raising your hand?
Just a comment. Yeah, that's hand, just a comment.
I saw it.
Rather than trying to fiddle around with the computer, I'm just raising my hand.
It worked.
Analog way, yeah.
Analog. Yeah, so I just wanted to say the work that has been done in terms of Nasli working with the stakeholders and the meeting that they've done at Hood has been really important, and the need to have Hood directly involved, and then having a first responder, the head of first responders, basically being there in an advisory capacity, I think is crucially important. So this is a very good resolution as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you so much, Director Palmer. And yeah, and I give a lot of sort of credit to both some of the SEC members who have really been advocating for the community of Hood, and as well as public members who have said, we are from Hood, we can't access this. A lot of our folks are older, don't have access to internet. Even if they have internet, it's just so slow. So it really put a fire under us, and rightly so, to try to do right by the community of Hood and start this conversation and make sure that they're up to date on what's happening.
Nasli, you don't want any fires under anything. You just want to do it.
It's a metaphor. Wrong metaphor for California.
Right. Let's not talk about smoke and fires. Nancy, really nice job clarifying, and I totally agree with your comments and Director Sarah Palmer's. I mean, I've listened in on a couple of the SEC meetings, and our goal, of course, is to have broad public input, and certainly, as you pointed out, having somebody like the fire chief to get involved is really an important new information and dialogue as part of the SEC. So I'd entertain a motion.
I move.
Got it. Do we have a second? Director Estamera is second. Let's go ahead. Any other comments or questions?
Director Atwater, we do have one public comment. We have Mr. Jim Wallace.
Great. Jim Wallace, please provide your comment.
Thank you, President Atwater. I'm a member of the SEC. I live in Cortland, and I clearly endorse this amendment. Look, Hood is sandwiched between intakes 3 and 5. Even though they're a small community of about 104 houses and a consensus population area of about 280 people, they are inarguably the most physically impacted by the project should the project go forward. And having a member from Hood is critical. Having a first responder from the Cortland Fire Protection District is critical, since this district would be affected by the project. And I would like to just chime in that I think this amendment is appropriate. I know that the members of the SEC will welcome both new members. Thank you, Mr. President.
I appreciate the comments, and thank you for giving us that advice. Okay, any other public comments?
Not at this time.
We have a motion and a second. Can we please call the roll?
Director Atwater?
Aye. Yes.
Director Palmer?
Yes.
Director Estamera?
Aye.
Director Boyce?
Aye.
Excellent. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Or resolution, sorry.
We'll move on to 7C, the September DCA monthly report. Who's going to give that presentation?
That's me. So, directors, you have a copy of our updated monthly report for September, representing the work through August. Highlights of the report: we're in our second month of live rollout of our new project management information system. Lots of employee training to get folks accustomed to the system, and we've been making some tweaks to the workflows as we get familiar with all the workflows. The engineering team is very busy finalizing the engineering documentation for the east and central alignment alternatives that we will be delivering to DWR, and shifting engineering focus onto the Bethany alternative. That will be our big work in the upcoming months for the engineering team. In terms of budget, our estimate completion remains at 34 million, consistent with the approved budget. You'll notice we had 5 budget change requests that were approved, totaling about 940,000. We have offsets that are in progress, and we should see those coming into the monthly report in the next month, and that will put us back on track with our unallocated allowance budget. But we continue to forecast a 34 million EAC. With that, if you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Catherine. Any questions by members of the board? Seeing none, why don't we move on then to 7D, the DCA Leadership Spotlight. Steve Minassian, Chief Engineer.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce Steve. I'm extremely excited. He's joined the DCA team. I've known Steve for over 10 years now. Back in my previous life in New York City, where he was the construction manager on the City of New York's most complicated and risky tunnel project that we had in the capital program. So, Steve, I pass the mic over to you, and give you opportunity to introduce yourself to our board and to the public.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And thank you for the board to give me this opportunity to present my background and my role on the project. Next slide, Claudia. So some of you I've met in person in the January and February meetings in Sacramento. Some of you remember me. Since then, I've been stuck in Michigan for 6 months. So here I am presenting this from my home. My background, I received my Bachelor of Science in Engineering from University of Southern California in 1983. Then I went on to get my Master's in Civil Engineering, specifically in Structural Engineering, Structural Mechanics from UC Berkeley a year later. And since then, I've been working on heavy civil and tunnel projects throughout the world, including the US, Europe, Middle East, and the Far East. I'm registered in 4 states. California was my first in 1987, and then New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. A few years ago, I also became a full member of the moles, which is a very limited part of the industry. The moles are based in New York, and it's an organization that is represents the tunneling industry around the globe. I think there's only a few hundred members globally. And the Beavers, who some of you have attended their functions, they're based in California, in LA specifically, and they're the dam builders, hence the names, the moles and the beavers. So being a member of the moles carries a lot of responsibility, both technically and also professionally. So I'm a proud member of the moles. I've been with Parsons for about 10 years. From 2010 to 2012, I was the division manager in the Middle East. I was based in Abu Dhabi, and I had work in 8 different countries, over 3,000 people working for me in 96 different nationalities. Then the company brought me back to the US in 2012, and I've been managing all the underground work, and I also manage actual work, such as the round-out tunnel Catherine's talking about. So 36 years since 1984, and I've worked throughout the world, primarily in the US and Canada, but also in the Middle East and Europe. So we have 25 active tunnel jobs right now, anywhere from $50 million jobs up to the largest job we have is actively the Riyadh Metro, which is about $25 billion as we speak. And since December, Catherine and the DCA asked me to become the chief engineer. So I've been part of the team. It's very exciting. Next slide, please. So here's some of the jobs I'm involved in, or I've been involved in. The photo on the top left is the project that Catherine's talking about. This is the shaft is 900 foot deep on one side and 700 foot deep on the other side. And we tunneled 3 miles underneath the Hudson River. We had water pressures up to 20 bars, which is approximately 300 PSI or more. And we successfully went through it, and we hauled through 4 months ahead of schedule last year, in August of last year. Since then, we've been putting in the pipe, and we're concreting the tunnel as we speak. The second photo is the Mariakos Klidi tunnel. If you ever go to northern Greece, my role was the independent engineer on that job. It was one of the very few projects that was completed through the Greek financial process problems. And it's 200 kilometers of road, of which 22 kilometers were roughly about 15 miles, was 54 foot diameter tunnel. These tunnels, they're deceiving. They're approximately 55 feet wide, about 20 feet tall. It's 3 lanes of traffic. They're open to public now, and trucks and buses and cars go through it every day. The next photo on the right, top right, is a Lake Mead intake number 3. And that was also one of the toughest jobs in the country at the time. And we tunneled underneath Lake Mead, about 600 feet below it. And the photo you see is the intake structure that was pre-built on the surface floated in the middle of the lake, 3 miles in, and slowly sunk to a structure in the bottom of the lake that we blasted with shape charges and then concreted it in with Tremy concrete. Then we had the tunnel come in underneath the lake and tie into that. And so I was the principal in charge and the technical advisor on that project. The bottom left, the first one, the Dubai Strategic Sewer. We are the designer and the owner's engineer, Minassian Parsons. It's about 70 kilometers of tunnels and 140 kilometers of micro tunnels. So it's about 50 miles of large tunnels and about 90 miles of small tunnels. The photo on the bottom right, this was my days when I worked for Jacobs Engineering, the Port of Miami Tunnel. I was the design manager and the project manager for this in Miami. At the time, it was the largest diameter tunnel built in the US. And we went underneath Biscayne Bay 2 times, once for the inbound and once for the outbound tunnel. And if you ever go on a cruise, once this current situation is over, you'll probably drive through it. And we built that tunnel. And the last photo on the bottom right, that's the Narragansett Bay Commission CSO tunnel. You can't see it, but in the bottom left, there's my photo. I was a project manager for the contractor for that. That was about 15 years ago or so. And that was 16,000 feet of tunnel, 30-foot diameter. Now, the interesting about this job, we designed and built a TBM ourselves. And everybody told us that it wouldn't work. Well, it worked. And we got better advance rates than most of the high-end TBMs today. And the key to it, some of you will appreciate, was its simplicity. The simpler you can keep it, the less downtime you have. When you don't have downtime, meaning things don't break down, you may go slower, but you get there sooner. That's the key. That was the key. That's what Winston Churchill said, go slow so we get there sooner. So I always remember that. Next slide.
Great quote.
Yes. So my role on the DCA, as Catherine mentioned earlier, I'm the chief engineer. My role is to provide technical help and management help as much as I can to the entire team. Specifically to the executive director, Catherine. She's expecting me, and she does, rightfully so, to look at things from the 20, 30,000 foot level, make sure we don't have a fatal flaw in what we're doing. And also, we're not missing opportunities where we can save money or do things better. So it's very difficult for me to keep myself out of the trenches sometimes because I love this kind of work and engineering so much. But I have to constantly remind myself that's not my role. I don't need to get into the nuts and bolts of things. So it's an internal, personal challenge for me. So I provide technical and practical input for our members. And also, I participate in the leadership meetings and all that. Sometimes I see something that's not, could you be going better? I try to help as much as I can in my own way. And lastly, we've been asked to provide check estimates to the other teams, and we've done that. Next slide. So, so far, I've spent some of my time reviewing technical memorandums, and some of these are 10 pages long, some of them are 50 pages long, and provide my comments. And I'm not really looking for the punctuation type or grammar comments, more of a big picture type thing if we miss something. We've also, myself and a few other folks, we've done the check estimate for the East and Central alignments, which we eventually reconciled with the Jacobs estimate, and which was presented to DWR later on. And I participate in as many meetings I'm asked to do, and if Catherine or Phil Ryan or someone, or Terry wants me to attend meetings, I'm more than happy to. And whatever documents that I'm asked to review and provide my input. So my role is very broad, and so I jump from practical issues to technical issues and that type of thing. Next slide. That's it. I'm honored and pleased to work with you and work with Catherine again to deliver another successful job here. Hopefully I'll be around in 20 years.
Yes. Well, I must say, you have an incredible resume and a wealth of experience and knowledge, and we truly appreciate very much your being part of our DCA team. Any other questions from the other members of the board?
Well, I would like to mention that I regularly attend the Beavers. They hold their meetings usually about the third Friday in January. I've never been to the Moles, but I've heard a lot about them. So I welcome your expertise and your colleagues.
Well, a good point, Director Bloy. I attended the Beavers when it used to be at the Century Plaza Hotel in Century City.
Right.
The first time I went was in 1987. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Almost 33 years ago, yes. So more than 33. And I didn't attend the Moles up until the time I went to the East Coast to manage a job in Massachusetts. Then it was closer to me to attend the Moles. But here are the two differences between the Beavers and the Moles. For the Beavers organization, the company is a member. So the company has to buy the tickets. So if you need a ticket, either your organization or a company has to buy you a ticket. The Moles, the individuals are a member. And the individuals can buy you tickets, or they can buy the company a ticket. And if any of you would like to go, and if there's no conflict of interest, we could buy you tickets. Myself, Vince Sombrato, and one other fellow in the company, we're Moles members. The second difference is the Beavers give awards to anyone in the industry, depending on your role and that type of thing. But at the Moles, there's only two awards. One of them is the non-member award, and one of them is the member award. So the non-member award obviously goes to someone who's not a member, and the other one, and the likes of Ralph Peck, Ron Hoyer, J.F. Shea have received these awards in the past.
Yes. Well, congratulations. They're both fine organizations.
Glad you're with us.
Thank you.
I don't
Very
know
much
how we
so.
got into a discussion of beavers and moles, but I enjoyed it.
Yes.
We're very esoteric.
Yeah. Well, very good. We really appreciate your professional assistance and your obviously incredible background and experience on how to troubleshoot and give excellent recommendations on how to move forward. So thank you again. We look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Thank you.
Great. Well, let's move on to 7E, an update on the Stakeholder Engagement Committee.
Hi again, everybody. So we had our 11th meeting of the Stakeholder Committee on August 26th, and just a brief update on things that always the minutes in the summary if you'd like to take a closer look. One thing that was a little bit different about this last meeting was that we actually had a member open forum. That's something that folks have been really asking for, a chance to speak with one another, especially because of Brown Act rules. Folks can't get together in large numbers outside of SEC meetings. So we gave a 1 hour sort of open forum. Catherine sort of set the scene by kind of talking about where the SEC started with its stated goals, kind of the work that we've done so far, as well as where the feedback from the SEC has gotten us to date in terms of all the changes that we've made to the project because of that feedback. So, and then folks spoke to an hour, which was really excellent. You know, just to, so I don't want to go into obviously what everybody said. It was really great to hear some of the innovative ways that people have managed to do outreach during this time. So one of our members, who's a big voter and represents voting, has been presenting to small groups of voters. What he didn't mention was that he's been doing it on his boat. He's figured out how to get the presentations on the TV and turn it around and invite people onto the deck of his boat as they're all sort of moored in and give presentations, which we're really grateful for. Again, sort of all the ideas that people have to get information out safely and creatively. There were also some asks for folks to come to their organization specifically, such as the Nature Conservancy, to talk about things that were more specific to them, as well as some good ideas on how to kind of consolidate all the information that we presented it into sort of more digestible nuggets for various groups. There's always going to be a bit of a tension, I think, between our kind of narrow lane of what the DCA does versus what SEC members and other members of the public would like to discuss. That's a tension I feel. That's something that definitely came up in the hour. There's a lot of issues in the Delta, certainly around harmful bacteria, air quality, things like that, some of which will be covered by Carrie in her environmental statement, some of which are just Delta issues that have nothing to do with this project, but people would like to see it addressed. So yeah, it was you know, that was voiced again, that kind of frustration that some folks feel. Let me keep going. So yeah, I think that was as our agendas open up a little bit more, I think it's really helpful to have that time set into our meetings to have that kind of discussion. It wasn't as much of a back and forth, but I think it was just great to kind of have people be able to talk about what's on their mind, what we could be doing better, what changes need to be made, or sort of future discussion topics. Carrie gave an update on the Army Corps of Engineers who released their Notice of Intent, the NOI, to prepare their EIR, so many acronyms, their Environmental Impact Statement. I think we've mentioned this before, but soil investigation work is beginning on publicly owned lands in the fall, just as an FYI. So there's already soil investigations that were done as part of a prior court-ordered issue that's been resolved now, but the other geotech work is happening. Our team and stakeholder engagement has been invited to help train some of those folks to really talk about the Delta, respecting its people, respecting the Delta's place, and how to sort of approach folks, which has been really great to work with the engineering team as they think about what it means to actually go out into, not the public, to these specific homeowners and landowners to get permission to do geotech work. But I think that's been really good. And then we had a presentation by Phil Ryan, our engineering manager, about changes to the proposed intake sites. He went through a lot of different changes that we've come up with in the last few months. And I just really want to point out, I thought it was just really impressive, some of the work that's been done, especially with Stone Lakes in mind. A lot of advocates for Stone Lakes and that region and the preserve, wilderness preserve, have been rightly concerned about truck traffic and whatnot. And the engineers have been able to eliminate thousands of truck trips along Stone Lakes and reduce a lot of the overall impacts to the refuge. And Phil went through some of the ways that they came up with those reductions. And then Phil went through some of further traffic reductions made through various sites throughout both alignment options, central and eastern. And spent time on the Bethany alternative, which I think is going to be a topic of discussion a great bunch as we move forward towards the end of the year with the SEC. So he gave sort of the overview of the Bethany, what it means, the good parts, the bad parts, and some of the complications, and what it would mean to not have the Southern Forebay, for example. So I think that was incredibly helpful. Just as an FYI for all of you, we also announced finally our virtual tours of the Delta, which are available on our website under the August materials for the SEC. If you go and check out the August 26th page, you'll see them there. And the virtual tour is just that. It allows you to go toward the northern facilities and then either one of the corridors, proposed corridors, and the southern facilities, and kind of go from a bird's eye view and zoom down and see the proposed different sites and what the facilities are, what they do, what it looks like. And it kind of follows you along as if you were on a road trip. And that opens up the possibility for folks, if they want to take a road trip, to kind of listen to it as an audio rather than a visual, and take one of our map books and just kind of go and visit site to site where they can to get a better idea of it. And finally, many, many months ago, you had approved some funding for us to build a new website. I'm very happy to announce that that new website should be up next week at some point, with apologies in advance that there may be 1 or 2 days where the current website is not very accessible as they make that transition. So again, I will let you know all that, but since I get the public forum, letting the public know that as well. It's hard to squeeze in to make sure it was there in time for this meeting and then to get the new one up by the next SEC meeting, but give the public time to access all of our documents and stuff that we post up for both of the meetings. But yes, very excited to see that website go up. And yeah, should be just a much sort of nice, we'll have more information, we'll be organized well, and really allow people to access all of our information in a one-stop shop. And I think that is it. We do not have any volunteers to do the board report out. And I'm just flagging the fact that we have some discussions to make with the SEC regarding our next 3 meetings in October, November, December. The holidays at the ends of November and December means that we're probably going to shift some of those dates around. We've been very consistent with the 4th Wednesday. That will probably change. So we'll let you all know how that is affected after our SEC meeting.
Great. Natalie, wonderful details on all this, and look forward to the new webpage and obviously over the next few months continuing the dialogue. Any questions from members of the board?
Thanks, President.
Nope.
Okay. Well, let's then move on to agenda 8, staff reports. General Counsel, Josh, you got an update for us?
Thanks, President Atwater. So my report is in the packet. The one thing I wanted to highlight is just to make sure that everyone saw the governor's announcement related to the new blueprint for California and the reopening, which replaces the county monitoring list. So it's a 4-tiered approach, and Sacramento County is currently in the most restrictive purple or widespread tier. But I saw an article in the B, and hopefully we'll move into red shortly. We're making sure that all DCA operations are in compliance with that and all of the local health orders. Happy to answer any questions on that or anything else in the report.
Great, thank you for that update. Any questions from members of the board?
Yep.
Seeing none, we'll move on to the treasurer's report. Katina?
Good afternoon. So our monthly report, just briefly, we ended August 1 at about $733,000 and $240. And this is mainly, we spent about $3.7 million during that month. And at the end of August, we saw a balance of $557,606. This is the lowest I've seen since I've been here, and I think it's mostly because we paid out more than you received in that month. But by September 8th, we received a little more money, so we have a balance of $717,000, a little excess of $717,000. So. And another item I just wanted to mention is, as we attached all the documentation to the report, is to report that budget versus actuals by appropriation for August, we're still lagging expenditures or below about $2.1 million, and specifically due, at least we were told, is due to delays in engineering and geotechnical work stemming from county litigation and current restraints on field work activities due to state and county mandates. So we're still monitoring that, and I'll take any questions you might have at this time. And just to add one more thing, we are planning maybe to bring your statements of audited financials either October or sometime early November. So we're working on those, and we should be bringing those to you in at least the next couple of months.
Great, thank you for that report. Any questions from the members of the board? Seeing none, thanks again for that concise, both the written report and the oral report. We'll move on then to, again, to the 8C and any other, as far as the environmental manager's report.
Thank you, President Atwater and members of the board. So we have some updates this month. We are continuing work on the Environmental Impact Report, or the EIR, to satisfy CEQA requirements. And so what we're working on right now is collecting information for existing conditions and working on identifying the methods to analyze impacts to different resources. And we have updated our schedule. So our updated schedule shows that we're planning to release a public draft EIR in early 2022 and a final EIR in mid-2023. And one of the reasons for our updated schedule is that the United States Army Corps of Engineers has issued a notice of intent that they're going to be the NEPA lead agency and develop an environmental impact statement. So our schedule that we released aligns their projected schedule and our schedule so that we are aligned throughout the process. So they have a notice of intent out now, and that they are accepting scoping comments on that notice of intent. They released it on August 20th, and they're accepting comments through October 20th. I also wanted to mention some of the soil investigation activities. So we have been in the field this summer doing some soil investigations that were holdovers from prior efforts. And also we've been working with the DCA as part of the more recent soil investigation initial study and mitigated negative declaration to start some of the field work associated with that document. So the DCA and DWR are working to obtain encroachment permits and permissions to access land. And when those permissions are provided, then we are hoping to get out in the field in the next month or two. Finally, I wanted to mention a couple of public outreach things. One of them is that we are working on a series of deep dive videos. We've released 2, and we have a few more in production. And the idea is that we're trying to show more information about topics that people have been interested in. The 2 so far, one of them is about soil investigations, why we're doing them, why they're important to the project. And the second is a general video about state water project operations. And one other thing I wanted to mention on the public outreach side is that we're working on a survey to collect information on how low-income, minority, and underserved communities use resources within the Delta, and that will help us address potential impacts and benefits to those communities in the EIR. So that's the end of my report, if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Carrie. That was a good executive summary of all your activities. It sounds very busy and you have a lot of work ahead of you. So we appreciate it very much. Any questions from a member of the board? Don't see any. So again, Carrie, thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing from you both in October and as you go forward with these more outreach activities this fall. Thank you. 8D, do we have any other verbal reports? Catherine, you have anything else you want to update us on?
Nope, I think we've covered it all.
Great.
I do.
Moving on to the agenda 9.
No, I do. Richard?
Sure, Director.
I have a verbal report.
Oh, good. You surprised me.
Okay.
But you're welcome. Go for it.
At any rate, I just wanted to let people know that I went to I've been attending the guidebook workshops for the agricultural work management plans. A part of this is my activities with the Aqua Agriculture Committee. It's actually one of the reasons too that I was another reason that I was attending it is because I really want to be able to try to understand what some of the issues are with the ag people. And in the AWMP, the Agricultural Work Management Plan guidebook, it's in draft right now. There is some very loose reference to Delta projects, not particularly the conveyance, but in terms of how people might include that in their AWMP. So I was interested in listening about that. The public comments for this are due at 5 p.m. on 9/21, and we're going to have another Aqua Ag work group meeting on the 21st as well. Also, I attended the Tribal Engagement Committee that Nasli and Catherine and Carrie and Phil were part of. And Catherine, Nasli Parvizi, and Phil Ryan all gave some of the SEC, some of our DCA information. And what was really good about it is hearing some of the questions that come up, because they're questions that those of us who are involved in this all the time, we kind of take for granted that people understand certain things, and then to find out that they really do still question it. But it was a very good meeting. It was with the Shingle Springs tribe, and then Carrie Buckman gave a very good a presentation on what DWR was doing. So it was good for me too, because in listening to this again, this time not as a person who had to be with the meeting, but as a person who was just an observer, it clarifies a lot of things to listen to this multiple times. So we have to keep coming back and presenting these multiple times, because even I need to hear this multiple times to really truly understand some of this. So thank you, Catherine, Nasli, Phil, and Carrie. It was very well done.
Thank you so much for briefing the rest of the board on that. I appreciate very much those comments, and kind of you're right, you gotta keep discussing these items because you'll learn the more you talk about it. And thank you very much. Any other table reports from any members of the board or any other comments? Okay, well then let's move on to agenda item 9, which is the future agenda items. Does anybody have a request for an agenda item in October, November? Well, I don't see any, so I think we're ready to adjourn.
Thank you.
Let's adjourn then.
Thank you all.
Bye. Bye.